Back on the Young Turks with what we hope to be perfectly functioning equipment this time.
Hello.
Yeah, so there you go.
Woo.
Right? Okay.
Okay.
Look,
So,
man.
John, have you ever had cheesecake?
I have had several cheesecakes, yes, actually. I had a friend in grad school who that was like his thing, his hobby, was to make cheesecakes. It's the main reason we were friends.
Okay, apparently there was a tweet during the break about how it's now Johnny Pie and Jenk Cheesecake. Which is clever, but we're going to let it go right there. Okay.
Yeah.
No, by the way.
Let's let it go in a decade or so.
Yeah. All right, you know what? I'm going to add fuel to the fire. Okay, now that we're going full old school. And yes, we'll do some news stories for you, and yes, it'll be more than 1.5. In wrestling, my favorite move was the cheesecake.
I have no idea what the cheesecake
The
is.
cheesecake is you get the guy's head under your arm like this.
Mm-hmm.
You put your arm around his arm and on his back, and then you pull him in one direction like this, so he naturally leans in the opposite direction because he doesn't want to get pulled down.
Yeah.
And then you go, sorry, wasikterlan, and you flip him over in the same direction he's already leaning. Okay.
So you're talking like actual wrestling, not
Like high school wrestling.
Yeah, from WWE.
Yeah. And so you flip him over, and then you've got his head underneath your arm. He's done for.
Some judo there for you.
Oh, that's exactly right. You
Nice.
use his energy against them.
Yeah.
In fact, in the second hour, we'll be talking about prana energy with the Smith kids, Willow Smith and Jay Smith. Are they incredibly smart or are they incredibly stupid? We will decide that in the second hour.
I wish I was voting on that one. Oh well.
But the cheesecake maneuver, one of the famous Uyghur maneuvers. Okay. All right, and I'll read one tweet for you guys. Roar says, old school is the logical conclusion to humanity. Okay.
Pack it up, guys. We're done.
There's a lot of ways you can take that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Let's get into the news. The net neutrality feud between Republican Senator Ted Cruz and Democratic Senator Al Franken continues. Now, if you haven't been following this all along, it started off when Barack Obama made clear to Tom Wheeler, one of the chairmen of the FCC, that he should do what's right vis-a-vis the American people when it comes to net neutrality, and Senator Ted Cruz was not having it, and so he tweeted this.
And let me tell you why this is a terrible...
Let's graphic one. There you go. So he said, net neutrality is Obamacare for the internet. Obviously, it must be the worst thing ever then. The internet should not operate at the speed of government. Ted Cruz is a guy who definitely thinks he's smarter than everyone else in the room. Now he seems to think he's more clever than anyone else on Twitter. But he made clear in remarks after that tweet that he does not actually understand even the basics of what net neutrality is and the problems that it's trying to solve. That led Al Franken to respond, and we have a couple little video clips. Here's the first.
And let me tell you why this is a terrible, terrible, terrible idea to have a fast lane. I'll give you an example with YouTube. Before YouTube, there was this thing called Google Video that Google had. And it wasn't very good. The guys who started YouTube were three guys over a pizzeria in San Mateo, California. It created a superior product, YouTube, and it traveled at the same speed as Google Video. And people liked YouTube better. So YouTube won because it was better. And a few years later, Google bought YouTube for $1.65 billion. Okay, so this was three guys above a pizzeria. Facebook was started in a dorm room at a college. That's the innovation that we have seen on the internet since the very beginning. It's always been, net neutrality has always been there.
So there's the contrast, really. It's Ted Cruz incorrectly stating that net neutrality is basically putting new layers of regulation that would stop innovation when it comes to the internet, connectivity, and things like that. And then Al Franken showing that, no, we've had decades and decades of innovation under the previous system before we started fiddling with it, and that was a neutral system when it comes to internet access.
Now, I haven't been shy about calling Republicans stupid on the show before, right? I don't think that's the case here. I mean, Ted Cruz is a really annoying guy, incredibly smug, wrong just an overwhelming majority of the time. But I don't think he's a dummy. And I think he knows exactly what net neutrality is about. And that's why I actually think he's more nefarious than people realize. So here's a guy who, I mean, really, you don't understand the concept of the internet. You think it's like Ted Stevens said, a series of tubes, and you don't know where they go. Or as Rick Perry said, where the tweeter takes your tweets. Okay? No, Ted Cruz knows. And he knows that he's doing the bidding of his donors. And in fact, he has gotten a tremendous amount of donations for the same telecom companies that want to slow down the internet for the rest of us and hold us hostage, basically, as they demand ransom for different websites.
More than likely more and more ransom over time.
Right. And Ted Cruz has to be aware that this is, if he had it his way, the internet would change. Okay? And Al Franken is arguing for it to remain the same internet that we all cherish at this moment. And he's setting out to deceive his own followers. So it's Sarah Palin-esque in that sense. He's a lot smarter than Sarah Palin, but Sarah Palin, the one thing she's good at is tricking her own followers to make a buck.
Yeah.
Like, so she'll raise all this money for Sarah PAC, and then she'll spend 4% of it on the Republican politicians she was supposed to help, and spend a majority of the money on hotels for herself,
pantsuits,
books, her own books that then goes into her pocket, right?
Yeah.
And so
ironic since she doesn't read.
Exactly. And in this case, Ted Cruz is trying to trick conservatives and libertarians into destroying the internet because that's what his donors want.
Yeah, and that's not even theoretical. I was looking at a couple of conservative sites talking about this feud, and they would play, a speech of Ted Cruz or whatever explaining his understanding of net neutrality, and then you go into the comments, and it's all conservatives, and they're saying, "Yeah, Ted, stand up for the internet. Don't let them get their hands on it." They're idiots. They have no idea what's going to happen because they're directly all Al Franken wants to do is get us back to more than a year ago before the ISPs ransomed Netflix to pay more money. Like we no longer really have a totally neutral system, but we did up until recently, and they have no clue who is fighting for them and who is fighting against them. And I'm glad that you brought up the smugness. In the second clip, you're going to see Ted Cruz. Oh, it's actually let's jump ahead to 5. This is going to be Ted Cruz explaining what net neutrality is to him. He's going to do another little analogy about innovation, and he's going to be incredibly smug during it.
This is about reclassifying something so it stays the same. This would keep things exactly the same that they've been.
What happens when government starts regulating a service as a public utility? It calcifies everything. It freezes it in place. Let's give a simple contrast. The Telecommunications Act of 1934 was adopted to regulate these, to put regulations in place, and what happened? It froze everything in place. This is regulated by Title II. This is not. Your smartphone, the internet, the apps, all of this is outside of Title II. The innovation is happening without having to go to government regulators and say, "Mother, may I?" We want a whole lot more of this and a whole lot less of this.
The only thing accurate about that clip is the darkness in which it is imbued. Like, he looks like a villain out of a movie in this dark set with, like, almost fascist colors behind him and imagery. And
Minions.
And no disrespect to whatever format that was. It just looked bad, right?
Yeah.
So now, okay, let's break down the nonsense. First of all, he's saying the telephones are a public utility, and now if you reclassify the internet as a public utility, then the government would regulate it more. That is not true. The intent of putting it as a public utility is not to regulate it more. No one has ever suggested that. The intent of that is to be able to classify it in a category where it will be left alone, just as it is right now. And the reason for that is because of Supreme Court decisions that say, all right, you can stop the companies from doing slow lanes and fast lanes and slowing down the internet for everybody who doesn't pay the ransom. If it is characterized as a public utility, you cannot do it otherwise. So it's responding to Supreme Court decisions. Again, Ted Cruz is a lawyer. It's not like he doesn't know that. He does know that.
It's hard to know.
And he's being disingenuous here to suggest to people, and think about one more layer of this. Oh, it'll be like the old telephones. Oh, that sucks, and the smartphones are great, etc. They have to pretend that they're in favor of keeping the internet as it is, even though that is the exact opposite of their position, in order to try to convince people. So that means they already know that they're on the wrong side. if they were on the right side, they would say, let's change the internet, right?
Yeah.
Because that's what they actually want to do. Let's change the internet to allow the companies to decide which websites are fast and which ones are slow, and be able to slow down 90% of your internet if you want. Let's allow the companies to make political decisions. Let's allow companies to have monopolies.
Yeah.
If they thought they had the winning argument, they'd just be honest about it.
Yeah.
They know they have the losing argument. That's why they have to pretend to actually be on our side while doing the opposite.
And they have to rely on the people listening to that speech and the people who are going to continue to vote for them to not have any idea what the issue is or who's on which side of it. And like, funnily, they bring up the Gruber thing over and over, a joke made about the stupidity of the voters in regard to Obamacare. But then they run entire campaigns based on, they're not going to fact check anything. And you might be right about whether or not he's nefarious or stupid. I'm not sure. But when I see him hold up a phone and say, the iPhone's only possible because they don't have to go to government regulators and say, mother, may I? You idiot. The iPhone in specific, Apple, and cell phone services and the products, there's dozens and dozens of regulations on every single layer of that. The idea that Apple has no government regulations on it, and that they're for no government interference, when this is a guy who almost certainly thinks that we should maintain the current level of subsidies that we have for fossil fuels, stopping innovation that would lead to futuristic clean technologies like solar and wind power and things like that, which find it harder to compete because we artificially keep the price of fossil fuel-driven energy down. He hasn't... They're supposed to philosophically and ideologically have a position when it comes to the economy that they want it to be free and they want it to be open, but they have on every issue, on every particular issue with each particular company, they basically roll the dice on whether or not they're getting paid enough to switch their position, and then they go and lie about their position. How is a regular person who doesn't follow it all day long supposed to know who to vote for?
Of course. And so I like that there's a healthy debate on the Young Turks as to whether Ted Cruz is evil or stupid. Okay, perhaps the answer is C. Both. Okay. Now, one more thing about this. There is such a thing as facts and truth. And so nobody has a monopoly on the truth. And now, if you are an outside observer and you don't know who's right about this, you say, well, look, the Young Turks claim very vehemently that this is the case. Ted Cruz claims the opposite. You can investigate it. And you can actually find out that there is a real truth to it. Don't just rely on us. Certainly don't just rely on Ted Cruz. Look into it. And I think that where the rubber hits the road here and where Republican politicians might eventually have problems is that conservatives also have websites.
Yeah,
okay?
That's true.
And so at some point, some conservative websites might be like, wait, do I really want Comcast and Verizon to be able to decide to pick a political enemies list and slow down their websites? If you're a conservative, look, don't be so smug like Ted Cruz and think that the corporations are always going to be on your side. Believe me, if it's to their advantage at all, they will crush you like they would crush anything else. It's logical, and if you oppose them politically, which has happened quite often, you think they won't slow down your website? So look into it, know what the reality is.
Yeah, I hope so, but when I see Alex Jones, the most prominent, I guess, conservative on YouTube, who's against net neutrality, you see Glenn Beck against net neutrality, has his own internet thing. I don't know. I honestly don't know where they're going to come out. And I mean, when it comes to like things like Netflix, until I guess like the Country Music Awards are on there, they don't seem to care about access to that. It seems like mostly a lib thing in general. But
no.
Anyway.
And look, and Alex Jones and Glenn Beck, if they can be classified at all, are more libertarian than conservative. But to me, that's even more ironic because it's the exact opposite of the libertarian philosophy.
Yeah.
Libertarian philosophy is let the market sort it out. So if everybody's on an equal footing, as Al Franken pointed out, a couple of guys in a garage can beat mighty Google and then eventually get $1.6 billion out of them, right? So, but if you change the internet, then the corporations will get to have basically monopoly or oligopoly power where you will not have a free marketplace.
Yeah.
You will have a marketplace dominated by them for their own profit and for their own economic and political interests. As a libertarian, you should hate that.
You would think.
Right.
Okay,
I
one
feel
more thing.
I feel like the only problem with, I hear you, Cenk, because they're going to get their whole lives screwed up too, the supporters of people like Cruz. But they've done to them on any other issues, Social Security, Medicare, jobs, education. And then the only problem is they've created this evil Democrat lib on the other side that says it's their fault as they screw up your life. As these conservatives screw up their followers' lives, they go, it's that guy's fault. So you can put their focus on the straw man, which actually isn't the problem, and they'll continue to have their lives destroyed by the people they're supporting, and they'll continue to go for it. That's the only downside. And then libs, Democrats, whatever, have to keep fighting this battle of trying to straighten the ship that keeps getting skewed with lies. So it's a never-ending cycle almost.
You know, honestly, I didn't know that Alex Jones was against net neutrality. And
yeah, they were saying it was like worse than the Nazis or something like that.
You know, this is an incredibly weird thing to say, but I'm disappointed in it. You know, of all the things, and the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers are going to kill 90% of us, all that stuff. Like, I got it. I'm used to it. Reed did a plot where somebody was killed. It was just to get back at Alex Jones. I'm used to all the madness, right? But for him to ironically fall right into the fucking trap of, I mean, what's the first website they'd go after? If they had any political inclinations, mainly they'll have economic inclinations, right? I mean, could they go after lib websites that, you know, criticize Comcast, et cetera? Sure, right? But Alex, they'd come for you first, you knucklehead.
Yeah.
Okay, who wants Alex Jones out there screaming and yelling about, you know, the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers? I mean, if they exist, believe me, you're number one on their list in terms of if they're actually pulling the levers of power. So that would be unbelievably counterproductive.
Yeah. Yeah. Although, again, if the Illuminati was as powerful as he seems to think it is, how come they haven't been able to shut him down yet? Sort of ironic. We did a video about how to tell if a conspiracy theory is likely to be true or not on TYT this week. Go check it out.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, why don't we switch it up? We were talking about corporate profits. Let's talk about something different. Let's talk about some corporate profits. If you're a corporation, it turns out that huge profits does not necessarily lead to huge taxes. In fact, the 7 of the 30 largest corporations paid more to their CEOs than they did in federal taxes in the last span of time that was analyzed. 7 companies, the ones I mentioned, Boeing, Ford, Chevron, Citigroup, Verizon, JP Morgan Chase, and General Motors, reported a tax rate of negative 2.5%, despite claiming more than $74 billion in combined pre-tax profits. That is not 2.5. That is not like an arrow pointing at the 2.5. That is negative 2.5%. And they paid their chief executives an average of $17.3 million each. In fact, 29 of the 100 highest paid CEOs were paid more in 2013 than the corporations they oversee paid in federal income tax. That's up from 25 in the top 100 in 2010 and 2011 surveys. So this is a problem that is not only bad, it's also getting worse in just the past few years.
So this is in the span of last year that they looked at these numbers. I'm amused that in the looking glass world that we have, that you can report $74 billion in pre-tax profits and then say, no, it's okay, I lost money, give me money back from taxes.
Yeah.
But wait a minute, how does pre-tax profits magically turn into post-tax losses? Well, it's with healthy accounting and loopholes put in there specifically to be able to make these claims. The people who put in the loopholes are government officials and politicians, and who are they funded by? You're going to be shocked to find out these same exact corporations.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, you almost at this point have to consider them interns. And I think they'll get a job if they stick with it.
Yeah, and they will. That's exactly what will happen.
Yeah.
And Eric Cantor loses his seat in Congress and immediately gets a job on Wall Street.
Yeah.
You know, and you win, you lose, doesn't matter. Anytime you retire, these guys have a job worth millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And they gave Eric Cantor about $3 to $4 million for about at most a year and a half of work.
Yeah, exactly.
And he doesn't know anything about finance.
Yeah.
They
Well,
say,
it's easy to criticize him, but he never calls in sick. He's there first every morning.
Yeah, and he said, no, it's okay. Eric's a hard worker, and he's always liked Wall Street from the outside. Oh, okay, yeah, that's true. That's true, right? True. So in this case, they're getting huge tax loopholes so that they get money back from us. So that's not just theoretically taking money out of our pockets by not paying their taxes. In this case, it's actually taking money out of our pockets as taxpayers and giving it over to them while they handsomely pay their CEOs. And one more thing about that, if their CEOs are so clever, and that's why they're being paid so much, then why is it that on the record, their companies have lost so much money? Well, you can't have it both ways. You can't say, well, I lost money, so you're going to have to give me a tax rebate, and at the same time say my CEO's a genius, and that's why I had to overpay them.
Unfortunately, apparently they can.
Apparently they can, yeah. Let's fix the rules.
Let's talk more about the tools of how they're able to do this. The 29 corporations we previously mentioned operated 237 subsidiaries and tax havens, and only 12 of those corporations reported U.S. losses last year. Now, interestingly about those 12, CEO pay at those unprofitable firms averaged $36.6 million, more than 3 times the national average for CEOs of large companies. So in this sample, at least, the most unprofitable companies are those paying far, far more to their CEOs. So apparently they're too clever, I think. It's starting to backfire on them.
Well, look, I don't blame any particular company. I don't blame any particular executive. So this is a systemic problem. So if you say to an executive, hey, you can stack the board with all of your friends and allies, and they'll pay you 3 times as much as the average CEO, even if you lose money, wouldn't you do it? I'd probably do it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, human nature leads people to say, yeah, I'd do that, right? If you say to an executive, hey, you can give campaign donations and then get 100 times the return, maybe 1,000 times the return from the government, well, wouldn't you do it? Human nature leads most people to say, well, of course I would do it. So the problem isn't any individual or any company, and you have to understand, companies are not immoral. They're also not moral actors. They're amoral. They have no morality at all. They're not designed for that. They're a computer program, basically, that we have designed to maximize profits. So that is what they're driven to do. So if they can buy politicians, of course they will. If they can rig the rules in their favor, of course they will. So let's not let them do that. Let's fix the rules. Let's fix the code so that they cannot do both of those things. And those are 2 separate things. One is buy off the government, and the other is gain control of their boards so that they can do things like pay themselves more money and hurt their shareholders, the true owners of the company, while doing so.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you would imagine. But then the most frustrating thing is that you have this system with so many obvious flaws, and then you have conservative economists come out and say, well, free market, we have these theories about the free market. Why aren't you listening to us when we propose some sort of flat tax and things like that? As if you can go anywhere in the United States and find an actual free market.
Yeah, wouldn't it be lovely if we had a free market? How do you think they got the negative 2.5% tax rate? You think that was because of a free market? Is there negative tax rates in free markets?
No, I don't even know what that means.
They use all sorts of accounting tricks like depreciation to come up with a really simplistic example to say, oh no, you see, I paid too much taxes then, or I'm going to pay more taxes later, and that's why this year you actually have to give me a rebate and give me money back. And this doesn't even count things like $14 billion a year in oil subsidies for literally the most profitable companies in the world, in the history of the world. But we give them $14 billion back. That's not free market. That's you go buy a politician, you do crony capitalism. And again, whether you're a liberal, conservative, or libertarian, you should hate crony capitalism. You should hate this kind of corruption, and you should fix it. It's called wolf-pack.com. We have the answer. Look into it.
The final thing I want to say about that, because I was just thinking, there might be some people who consider themselves politically in the middle watching this, and they see that they're not paying taxes, and many of the people watching it might be, well, I don't want to pay my taxes, so I'm not going to begrudge them if they don't have to pay it. But you have to bear in mind, it's not like these corporations aren't exacting any costs socially. Their trucks drive on the roads and do damage to the roads. If it's, Chevron or something like that, our military has to defend them when they do things abroad. Our justice system has to prosecute their cases. All of that has to be paid. And if they're not paying it, and they're not paying it, who do you think is paying it? You're paying it. I'm paying it when I actually pay my taxes. All of you out there are paying it. They're just not paying it. And so that should be frustrating for you, even if you naturally like low taxes.
Look, the percentage of corporate taxes as a share of overall taxes has dropped incredibly. I don't have the chart in front of me now, but my rough recollection was it was in the ballpark of 40 to 50% of all taxes were corporate taxes, right? Now it's dropped to like 5%. So who made up the difference? You did. You did. They shifted the tax burden onto you, okay? Now, we have a corporation here, Young Turks LLC, right? And I don't mind paying taxes as long as we make money, right? You don't pay taxes unless you make money, right? And so that's a more logical burden for a corporation to bear than it is for individual taxpayers like you guys. Like, again, even if you're a conservative, you hate taxes. We're trying to help you. We're trying to help you. Make the burden on the people and the entities, they're not people, on the entities where they are most logical, okay? And one super last thing about this, conservatives, there's some things you like in the government, right? You like war, you keep voting for war, right? Somebody's got to pay for that war. If corporations are paying negative taxes, and again, it's not all of them, but it's a significant, healthy chunk, as we explained there. Well, then somebody's got to pay for it. They're not paying for it. That means you're paying for it. So everything that you know, whether you like it in the government or you hate it in the government, that you're paying for it and they're not. just so I understand that. Okay.
Exactly. You want to push through to another one?
Yes.
Okay, let's do it. I think you're going to like this story. I have a feeling. It turns out there might be something fairly unique about the culture of the banking industry that turns normally honest men and women into gigantic liars. Researchers at the University of Zurich tested 128 employees at a bank with an honesty test. The bankers were told to flip a coin 10 times. Each time they flipped, they could earn $20 if it matched what researchers had requested, either tails or heads. An honest person would report matching the requested flip result about 50% of the time, since it is effectively random. But when workers were asked questions about their work at the bank, placing their work at the forefront in their minds, they self-reported the result that paid off 58% of the time. When researchers repeated the test with more than 350 people not in the banking industry, job questions didn't change honesty levels. Researchers tested 80 employees of other banks, and they came up with about the same results as those with the main bank. So effectively, if you work a normal job and they try to manipulate you by talking about your job, it doesn't affect how honest you are in the study. But those bankers, suddenly they're thinking, you know what, I'm going to try to get a little bit more for myself.
So I like this partly because it validates what I've been saying all along. It's not that they're bad people. Like, it's absurd to think of a banker as like, oh, he's a particularly evil person, right? No, they're just regular human beings responding to normal incentives and disincentives. And as one guy, Walt Pavlo here, who's not a banker but who got caught for wire fraud and money laundering, who now is a good guy, talks about it, lectures about it, says, look, they told us at MCI where he worked, be more aggressive and make money at all costs. And so we responded to those incentives, right? And so I like that they tested it against people that were not in the banking industry, in other industries, and they were perfectly honest. Yeah. And I like that they tested it with bankers about their home life, where they were perfectly honest, right? They're not bad people. It's just that when you put them in a context and a culture, and you remind them of that context, and you say, okay, now how are you going to act? They're like, well, we got taught to be aggressive and not mind the rules too much, right? So I'm going to cheat a little bit and put money in my pocket because that's kind of what I do in my day job.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, they're following the incentives. They're following their training. And many people would say that if they didn't try to get ahead in that way, they'd probably be replaced by someone else who did or would. By the way, the American Bankers Association got wind of these results, and they said, while this study looks at one bank, which isn't actually true, they looked at other banks as well, America's 6,000 banks set a very high bar when it comes to the honesty and integrity of their employees. Banks take the fiduciary responsibility they have for their customers very, very seriously. And every time they crash the economy, they sit and they think about it really hard for a while.
And they think, you know, we have crashed this economy with the utmost integrity.
Exactly.
And if you don't remember, there was great hearings in the Senate and certainly great writings in Rolling Stone, Matt Taibbi, and many other places, where we found the internal memos of these great, honest bankers with their wonderful integrity. And they would say things like, let's crush our clients. Our clients, okay, not even like random people, the people we're supposed to be serving. Let's make them eat shit sandwiches, okay? And all these other descriptions that elude me, okay, that I never even heard about, to make sure that they scam their clients. And they full well knew it. And in the recent story we did, JP Morgan Chase said, stop emailing about all these practices. Basically, we don't want to get caught. It's obvious what we're doing. We're making things that are toxic look better so we can trick people into buying them. Okay, that was part and parcel of how they made billions of dollars and also how they crashed the economy. Now, it's unfortunately endemic into the current banking structure, but it doesn't have to be. There are other banking structures across the world that work. We need banks. The idea isn't to get rid of banks. It's to make them work better so that we actually do have honest bankers with integrity, which is possible.
Yeah, give them some incentive in the long term to make the bank that they work at actually a success, rather than just, I want to get a couple of big bonuses and then I'll go live in the Cayman Islands or something.
And I'll even give you an example associated with the United States. During the Great Crash in 2008, none of the private banks went under, okay? And the reason for that was, it is at those private financial institutions, it is the partners' money that's at stake.
Yeah.
So they were a lot more careful with it. Now, when it's a public company, well, then the executives, it's not their money. It's the public. It's the shareholders' money.
So who gives that?
Right, and that's at a worst case scenario. They know that likely the government's going to step in and have the taxpayers foot the bill anyway. Yeah. So when it's not your money, like if I sent you to a casino and said, all right, here's $100, $1,000. Now you'll get to keep all the winnings, but you'll have none of the losses. What would you do? You'd gamble like a madman because maybe you win. You'd certainly bet the whole $1,000, and you might bet it on the biggest possible gamble. Why? Because if you bet it on just one hand of blackjack, well, you can get your money back. You might even get 1.5 times your money. If you put it on a 1 to 100 odds, if you win, well, then you get $100,000, right? But if you lose, you still lose zero.
Exactly. We should test that in Vegas. I bet we can get Anna to go and do it. I think we might. One final thought on this. The most amazing thing out of this has absolutely nothing to do with bankers. It's that when you tell people if your flip matches our flip and you report it to us, we can't even see it, we'll give you $20, and they're almost perfectly honest. That's amazing. That normal humans are actually that honest when $20 is riding on it's tails.
Yeah. The bankers are
Good
honest.
News about humanity.
Yeah, when they're not thinking about their job, they're honest. And the normal set of human beings that are not bankers,
that's amazing.
Generally honest. The only time they're dishonest is when it's bankers thinking about their work. So that is good news for humanity overall.
Well, thank you, Zark. Are we going to our first break?
Yes, we'll be right back. That was a segment from hour 1 of the show.
Now for the better hour, the second hour.
Drums. You can get the whole show on TYT-network.com. All right, back on the Young Turks. All right, hey Anna.
Hi. I was distracted by that music, like sound like porn music.
God bless.
Yeah.
Boney D says there's been a number of videos showing Alex Jones defending the Koch brothers. He's probably paid by them. Sam Cedars covered it. Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I'll have to look into that. Sam Cedar, excellent show, part of the TYT network. Everybody check it out. Google Sam Cedar on YouTube. Michael Strejan says Illuminati won't shut down Alex Jones. If a crazy man is the one saying Illuminati is real, it seems fake. Alex Jones is the conspiracy. Well, Michael, I've been saying that for a while. Like, I don't know that it's true, but that's never stopped Alex Jones either. No, I say it as a hypothesis. If you want to do a false flag operation, you get a crazy guy to rant and rave about how the Illuminati are going to take over and kill 90% of us and do all these insane things. Meanwhile, you'd slip in a couple of things that are true in there. And so then when people said, oh, look, those things are true. Oh, yeah, sure. You're one of those Alex Jones guys. Yeah, I guess the Illuminati's going to kill us all, right? It would be a very clever false flag operation, although I don't know that they're that clever. Okay, so last 2 things here are, Tyler James with a good point that we like. Wasn't Jesus into that whole helping the poor thing? You would think Republicans would love welfare. Like if Republicans ever read the Bible. Okay, and Amanda Thompson says, oh, I'm so pissed I'm missing the Young Turks. Just finished my ridiculously long math test that took forever, rushing to catch the second hour.
Oh.
Okay, Amanda, we all hope that you made it. Here it is, the second hour. And next time, leave your math test early. I mean, is a good grade really that important? I'm kidding. I'm not Spike Lee. Take your math test all the way. All right, next.
All right, we have updates to the Bill Cosby story, and they're disastrous. Don Lemon had one of Bill Cosby's rape accusers on his program, a woman by the name of Joan Tarshis, and she came out fairly recently and talked about how she felt that she was drugged and also taken advantage of by Bill Cosby. Now, Don Lemon asked her some really interesting questions and took a lot of heat for it, and I want you to take a look at what it was.
Can I ask you this, because and please, I don't mean to be crude, okay?
Yeah.
Because I know some of you, and you said this last night, that you lied to him and said, I have an infection, and if you rape me, or if you have intercourse with me, then you will probably get it and give it to your wife.
Right.
And you said he made you perform oral sex.
Right.
You know, there are ways not to perform oral sex if you don't want to do it.
I was kind of stoned at the time, and quite honestly, that didn't even enter my mind.
Yeah.
Now I wish it would have.
Right.
But
meaning the using of the teeth, right?
yes, that's what I'm
as a
thinking.
weapon,
Yeah, I
thing.
didn't even think of it.
Biting. So,
Ouch.
Yes, I had to ask.
Well, no, you didn't have to ask. He went there. That was uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So, look, there's a couple of problems here. First of all, it assumes that if you don't quote unquote fight back,
that you wanted it.
that you were in some ways a willing participant. I mean, you could have used your teeth, right? But remember, she was drugged. I mean, all that, again, these are allegations, but all the allegations say that he drugged them first. So it's a little harder to think straight when you've been drugged, right? And there's this enormous power difference. And then remember, if somebody's about to rape you, you're in a very dangerous situation. So if you fight back against the guy, a lot of people would naturally be scared that he would do something worse to you.
Yeah, I don't know what he was thinking, because he himself is a victim of sexual abuse, right? But as a woman, yeah, you would fear that, especially because she's a young woman, she's dealing with a much older man, right, who has a lot of power, who's probably physically stronger than her as well. And you're suggesting that, hey, if you didn't want it, then you should have, like, bitten into his penis and that would have stopped it? No, that could have actually led to a much more violent altercation. And yeah, as she mentions in her allegation, she says that she was drugged. She said that he made her a red eye and she drank it, and then later on she was in the car, she drank something else and she started feeling very stoned. Next thing she knows, she wakes up in his bed naked, and her quote was, "You old shit, I guess you got me this time, but it's the last time you'll ever see me." So, and it's weird because this account is so similar to all the other allegations, right? At this point, there are 15 women who have come forward with similar allegations.
So look, I'm in favor of tough questions, and maybe there were people in the audience who are wondering the same thing. But you don't want to perpetrate, you don't want to reinforce the wrong ideas. And so you got to be incredibly careful if you're going to go in that direction. And that was not the most careful way of phrasing it, handling the issue, explaining it to the audience, let alone your guest.
Yeah. Now, Don Lemon has realized that, which is why he did apologize to his audience. But I want you to take a look at his apology and let me know whether or not you think it's good enough.
A word about my interview last night with Cosby accuser Joan Tarsis. As I am a victim myself, I would never want to suggest that any victim could have prevented a rape. If my question to her struck anyone as insensitive, I am sorry, as that is certainly and was not my intention.
But you had to realize that it would come across to some people as insensitive. It's a fine apology. I don't need to have it be more, over the top or anything like that. I don't love the apologies in the first place. As a general thing, they have to do this as a matter of routine. Now you go out there and you do your Maoist apology and you apologize for everyone who's ever been in your family and all that stuff. But having said that, look, I just want them to be a little bit more human. If I was doing that, I'd be like, look, that was a tough question, and I thought that people in the audience would want to know, but I shouldn't have phrased it that way. That's my bad.
And look, no matter how he phrases it, he's going to get heat for it, because it's beyond provocative to ask something like that, and beyond insulting to ask something like that to someone who is stating that she's been raped, right? But it's not like he said something like, oh, did you try to bite him or fight back? He basically said, there are ways to stop it.
You're right. That's actually even worse.
Yeah. So
right.
The way that he stated it made it worse. He wasn't asking a question. It was like he was, wagging his finger at her and telling her, you could have prevented this. You could have, used your teeth. And
it would have been nice in the apology if he'd said, it was obviously insensitive.
Yeah, not if
As
I
opposed
offended.
to if I offended you.
I hate that
is,
phrasing. It's so bad.
Right. And then I would say double down on don't do an apology if you're going to say, if I offended your sensitive ass.
I mean, can you imagine if, in 2010, he came out with his book. He talked about how he was molested by his mother's best friend's son, right? Can you imagine if he's coming out, he's sharing this very, very dark part of his past, and someone asks him things like, oh, but did you want it? What did you do to fight back? You could have fought back against that molestation as a kid.
Right.
It's not the right way to handle it.
It's clearly shifting the blame onto the victim.
Yeah. All right. Janice Dickinson is the latest woman to come forward with rape allegations against Bill Cosby. Now, it might seem as though this is the first time she's talking about it. However, Howard Stern did release tape from 2006 where Janice Dickinson was very clear that she had very, very bad feelings toward Bill Cosby and that he was a bad man who had taken advantage of many women. Now, she gave this interview to Entertainment Tonight, and here's what happened. Dickinson said the incident took place in 1982 when she was only 27 years old. I was on a job in Bali in Indonesia, and he called, she said to Entertainment Tonight. The conversation was, to the best of my recollection, you need to get to Lake Tahoe because I'll be performing there, and I want to offer you that job we talked about, as well as helping you out with that singing career. Okay. According to her statement, Dickinson was in her hotel room with Cosby when he gave her a glass of red wine, again, very similar to what all the other women are saying, and a pill. The next morning I woke up and I wasn't wearing my pajamas. I remember before I passed out that I had been sexually assaulted by this man before I woke up in the morning. The last thing I remember was Bill Cosby in the patchwork robe, dropping his robe and getting on top of me.
Of all the different recollections of the women, that to me was the most jarring, because it creates a visual for you of, as you're about to pass out after some guy gave you a pill, you see him disrobe and mount you. Oh my God.
And you can't control it.
And you can't control it. I mean, again, if you're a woman, or it could be a guy, you know, more men suffer rape in the military and obviously in prison than women do, right? Mm-hmm. So anybody can relate to that in that sense. And the idea is the last thing you see is a guy mounting you. It's terrifying, terrifying. Now, of course, Cosby's lawyer comes out and says Janice Dickinson is just looking for attention. All these charges are all old, they're all discredited. He hired an attorney that is far more aggressive. Mm-hmm. And so this is a guy who is now going to be on the warpath against any of these charges.
Right.
And he's an attorney that's normally hired by celebrities when they need to solve issues like this.
Yeah.
And again, it doesn't mean that anybody's guilty. You hire the same attorney if you want to aggressively fight back against false charges as well as true charges, mm-hmm. right? So having said that, this is now woman number 15 coming out with nearly identical stories, same fact pattern. Now, look, if I'm his attorney, I say, well, they heard it in the press, right? So it's easy to copy the story you just heard. You just change a couple of the details, etc. And here's a guy who's famous. Here's a guy who's rich, etc. But now remember, none of these women are suing him.
No.
Right? It wasn't like the Michael Jackson case where the whole thing was leading to a lawsuit. Well, then you can say, well, if you got molested by Michael Jackson, you might also sue, but there is a financial incentive, right? These are women who did not sue him then, who didn't bring it, and then he never went to court, mm-hmm. right? So now some of the civil charges back in 2006, he settled out of court. We don't know how much that was for, mm-hmm. but he's never been convicted. He's never been charged. I'm just telling you, there are 15 women with very similar stories, and the idea that they all made it up, because they all retroactively, that second to last woman is from 1969, right? That with allegations. Well, she wants to get famous now after she's in a completely different field doing something else with her life, or that she wants to sue now, or she wants what? Does she wants to go get a rich and famous guy?
I don't see what the incentive is. Yeah,
I don't see what the incentive is. It seems improbable.
Right. Now, NBC must realize that this is a very, very controversial issue that they want nothing to do with, and as a result, they have decided to scrap Bill Cosby's upcoming sitcom with the network. So that sitcom will not be happening, and also Netflix has decided to put the stand-up that they were going to air on hold. Okay, so his stand-up will not be available at the end of November, which is what they were planning on doing originally. We don't know whether or not they're going to get rid of the stand-up completely or if they're just going to postpone it for a later time. But as we know now, Netflix will not be showing his stand-up in late November.
One of the accusers, Barbara Bowman, said about the NBC pilot and sitcom, I think it's irresponsible to put him back in a position of a patriarchal father in an authoritative and trusted position. I'm very disappointed that he would be endorsed in that type of role again. Which is a fair point, and apparently NBC has reconsidered since she said that. Now, I'm not here to judge Bill Cosby because we're not in a court of law, although I just told you what my opinion on it is based on what we know right now in the press. Okay, but if I was NBC, I would have to make a decision. Right. And I agree with NBC's decision. I would definitely put this on hold.
Yeah, they made the right decision.
Because at a bare minimum, you got to see if this does go to court at some point and have that adjudicated. And
this is one of the stories where I have no idea how it's going to end. Like, is there going to be an investigation? I mean, obviously there are statute of limitation issues, and I don't know how it's all going to play out, which is why, and this is not to blame any of the victims or anyone who went through what they're alleging. If you're a victim of rape, you have to go to the authorities right away and get evidence, collected, because you don't want that person to do it over and over and over again. And I know it's a difficult thing to do because people are going to doubt you, it's uncomfortable, but it's the only way to get justice. Because let's say that these accusations are true. He was able to do this for decades with absolutely no ramifications.
Yeah. I don't know why I give advice to these guys, but if I was giving advice to Bill Cosby, it'd be the same advice I give to Donald Sterling. There's a cave with your name written on it. Go in hiding. Okay, I mean, what are you doing trying to make sitcoms and do comedy specials? You're 77 years old.
He's emboldened by the fact that he never really had to deal with the consequences. Okay, he paid a settlement out of court. We don't know how much that settlement was, but he never had to face real criminal charges.
Dude, you paid whatever amount in that settlement, and I'd be surprised if it was a small amount, in 2006. You know that there are all of these women out there, if it's true, right? You're going to get back into the public eye. Call it a day, man. Take your winnings off the table in terms of his career, the money that he made, the fame that he had, etc., right? Because it is possible that you did some terrible things. Why would you risk having that come out? But I guess in a sense for those women, certainly, for the rest of us in terms of our edification, we're glad that he came back out, right?
Yeah.
So that it could be exposed. Because all of this leads to helping stop this in the future.
Of course.
Right? Not just for Bill Cosby, for others. Because if the guys who do this think that there are going to be consequences, they're less likely to do it.
Yeah.
Right? And so when they see Bill Cosby paying the consequences here, then it might put a thought in their head like, ooh, wait a minute, maybe I should be more careful.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't do this. Maybe it's as simple as maybe I shouldn't do this as much. And that at least saves some women, right? I mean, all this is tragic and horrible, etc. But at least by airing it out, we hope we get to a better place.
Absolutely. Ugh. All right.
Okay, I just got to say it one last time. Right or wrong, whether he's guilty or not guilty, Bill Cosby's reputation is done. Stick a fork in it. Nobody's going to look at Bill Cosby the same again. Yeah. All right. Okay. It's enough said.
Uber has launched an investigation on one of its own executives, and for the first time on Tuesday, they posted their privacy policy. And both actions took place after Emil Michael, who is the executive that they're investigating, had a dinner with some individuals where he stated that maybe it's a good idea to dig up dirt on journalists that are critical about Uber and then air their dirty laundry out there. Now, according to BuzzFeed, which of course broke this news story, Uber took both actions in the wake of a BuzzFeed news story that revealed that the reporter's ride had been tracked without her permission and that another Uber executive had suggested the company might smear journalists who wrote critically of Uber. So there is a huge privacy issue now because apparently Uber has technology that allows them to not only track their drivers but track customers as well. Apparently drivers do not have access to this technology. However, executives and corporate employees at Uber do. Early this November, one of the reporters of this story, Joanna Brurian, arrived to Uber's New York headquarters in Long Island City for an interview with Josh Moyer and general manager of Uber New York. Stepping out of her vehicle, an Uber car, she found Moyer waiting for her. There you are, he said, holding his iPhone and gesturing at it. I was tracking you.
Creepy.
Yeah. Why would you do that?
I think that they gave in the temptation to brag about their technology without thinking through, oh, this might really creep people out, that we have the ability to track them. So if they're going to different places, we know exactly where they went. I'm not sure that they would want us to know that, let alone know that we are looking at it.
Yeah. I mean, look, honestly, part of me assumed that they were doing it anyway, right? So if someone had asked me, does Uber track you? I'd be like, yeah, of course. I mean, the app allows you to track the driver so you can see exactly where they are as they're approaching you. So yeah, the tracking technology is available. It's being utilized. I don't believe for a second that the drivers don't have access to it. Come on, let's keep it real. Everyone's tracking everyone. As long as you have GPS capabilities on your phone, people are tracking you.
So now Uber claims that they've had a privacy policy all along. It was just never public, right? They were private about their privacy policy.
Which is weird.
Okay, maybe. And they say, no. In our policy, we told people internally never track people because that would be an invasion of their privacy. But there's a story in the article that explains how they were doing it at a big event. They had it on a board where they were tracking some people. They called one of the guys they were tracking. They're like, oh, we're tracking you. It's fun. And he's like, that doesn't sound fun. They were saying it as like a compliment, like you're a big enough person for us to demonstrate by tracking you where you are now. And they told him his exact location at the time.
So the person that they were tracking is actually a venture capitalist by the name of Peter Sims. And he wrote about being tracked in 2011, and he was not amused by it. He's like, no, this is creepy. I don't like it. Now, going back to the BuzzFeed journalist who showed up to the New York City headquarters, and the guy was standing there telling her, hey, I've been tracking you. Apparently 2 months before that, to make a point about questions that she had asked about the rideshare competitor Lyft, he had emailed her logs of some of her Uber trips. He had not asked for permission to access her data. So think about that for a second. That means that you have this private company now that has the ability to figure out exactly where you've been going, what time you go there, how you get there, which of course is through Uber. But I mean, that's not okay. I mean, that kind of information can be utilized against someone, whether it's a journalist or some other person who's just simply using the service. It could be used vindictively.
This is a much bigger deal to Uber than the earlier controversy. The controversy about targeting media reporters, well, most people aren't media reporters. They should care about that. They should care about freedom of the press, but it's more theoretical. This, they'll think, wait a minute, you're tracking me. What if somebody inside the company gets a hold of that information that I don't want to get a hold of that information? And it could be on the local level. Maybe there's somebody working at Uber in the local level that happens to know you, right? Or has a vendetta against you. I mean, you name a scenario. And I don't know about you, but 30% of the people I know that use Uber are drunk when they use it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
You really want people to be able to track everywhere you've gone when you're drunk?
So here's the thing that I don't understand. Uber is just, I mean, I love Uber. I'm going to be honest with you. Uber has prevented me from getting behind the wheel while drinking many times, right? Not to say that before Uber I was like drunk driving all the time or anything like that, but
it allows you to go out.
It allows you to go out, enjoy yourself, and not worry about getting behind the wheel, looking for a designated driver. I mean, it's done a lot of great things for densely populated areas like Los Angeles and New York where you want to go out and have a good time, right? And especially in LA where you don't have access to good public transportation. Sorry, habit. But why are you ruining your own business, dude? Like, why are you going to go after journalists? Why are you tracking people needlessly? Why are you guys being so irresponsible? It sucks because you want to support the business. It's a good business, but there are way too many missteps right now.
Yeah. And look, it's one thing in New York City where there's already a ton of cabs. In LA, you couldn't get a cab if your life depended on it.
You have to call and you wait like about 30 minutes to get a cab.
And half the time they decide, no, I'm not going to show up.
It's the worst.
No, and that's why there was a market need for a company like Uber, right?
Yeah.
And that's why they're successful. You got a good thing going. Don't fuck it up, which is what you're in the middle of doing right now.
Exactly. Now, Ashton Kutcher is one of the investors into Uber. In fact, he has spent some of his hard-earned money into supporting the company, and as a result, he feels the need to defend Uber. Now, of course, this is a conflict of interest, but after Emil Michael, who's one of the executives at Uber, made a comment about how he should probably do some research into journalists' personal lives and air out their dirty laundry, Ashton Kutcher took it upon himself to support Michael's statements. In fact, here's what he had to say via Twitter. What's so wrong about digging up dirt on shady journalists? And they included Pando Daily, TechCrunch, and also Uber. And so he doesn't really get it. He also says, so as long as journalists are interested and willing to print half-truths as fact, we should question the source. or you should question the source. So I'm curious to see what you have to say with him. Obviously, I disagree. I don't think you should dig dirt on journalists and do vindictive things just because they're critical of you and your company.
Well, so of course he's wrong, and he's going to admit later that he's wrong. But I think that people are hyping it up a little too much, to be honest. And I'll tell you why. First of all, you have to kind of understand the perspective that Ashton Kutcher is coming from, which is that of a
investor.
Fortunately, no. Fortunately or unfortunately for the country, as a mega celebrity. So he views the press as mainly the paparazzi who are always hounding him. So he thinks like those guys are the shadiest people in the country. So like they keep investigating my life. Why can't I investigate their life? So that's one of his perspectives.
That's a good point.
Right? So then his other perspective is, in this case, he's an investor. But he's not an investor, I think, that's been doing this a long time, is savvy enough to know that, hey, if I'm going to make a public statement about this company, I should let people know that I've got a conflict of interest here. He's an actor who happens to have an investment company, and he gets upset about this, and he says, oh, okay, and he jumps in there to defend Uber. And then people are like, hey, you might want to let people know you have money in Uber, so it's not like you're some objective dude.
Yeah.
And then later, he kind of acknowledges that, so I kind of want to let him off the hook.
All right, so let me give you the last two tweets. In one tweet, he says that he speaks for himself, not for Uber. And then finally, here's his apology. He says, "You are all right, and I'm on the wrong side of this. Ultimately, I just wish journalists were held to the same standards as public figures." So you're right. I think that is the perspective he's coming from. He's tired of like the smear campaign that he's probably had to deal with in the past because of whatever he's done in his life. But, you know, you also have to think outside the box and think outside your own bubble. I mean, there are more than just entertainment journalists out there. There are journalists that are doing real work, and you can't go after them and attack them. They're the ones who are supposed to be holding authorities accountable. So ignore all the, whatever, tabloid journalists and focus on the ones that are actually doing some good in the world.
And in this case, they were holding Uber responsible. Uber. And they were doing what they were supposed to do as journalists. Look, I already said in some of the articles that were originally written about him, I didn't necessarily agree with, but you don't crack down on people actually trying to earnestly do their job as journalists when they're real journalists doing real work. And they did expose that Uber was using Godview, which tracks their clients, which is very good investigative reporting.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, lots of really great stories, including Will Smith's kids and how they're probably smarter than you.
You liked that, didn't you?
Well, if you like that, you'll love the whole show. TYT-network.com. Get the whole show as a member.